Hello, 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 and welcome to My Empty Hands, a podcast about the martial arts with a focus on Kempo. As always, I'm Reggie Darden, and I am excited to once again have another wonderful guest that I'm going to be chatting with today, Mr. Tim Bullet. And yeah, we're going to get into his journey. We're going to get into some of his experiences and whatever other items that we decide that we're going to chat about, then we'll see if we can get to that. Usually start things off with just a brief history on my background. I'm currently training in 5 different martial arts at this point: American Kempo, Capoeira, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and Hapkido. I also have some experience in Taekwondo and did a little boxing in my time in the army, and so yeah, I stay pretty busy. But I can't say no when somebody says, "Hey, you want to train in this or that?" I just can't stay away. So that's a little bit of my background here. So we are going to turn it over to our wonderful guest here. So where did the martial arts find you? Where did Kempo find you? Where did it all start? And we'll just kind of run it from there.
Good morning, Reggie. Thank you for having me on this morning. I appreciate it, and I wish you the best with those 5 martial arts. That's a plateful there, that's for sure. So I remember trying to keep up with Tracy's Kempo and Parker's Kempo when I was younger, and I had to give one of them up because it was just such a massive material to try to remember. But those are all based in techniques which are wrapped around a curriculum, and, so there's a lot of memory work in there, so I guess it's good for the brain as well, so but n no, Reggie, like a lot of others, I started young. I was in school in the '70s, and they, started busing the kids to different schools and so forth to integrate everybody, and I kinda ended up in a bad neighborhood, so to speak, and got my ass handed to me more than once. So for me, getting into martial arts was more of a kind of a necessity. But what first started it with it was, I've started looking at books. They found some martial arts books in the school library of all places, and you'd see a little bit on TV here and there back then. I think they had some stuff on Saturday morning. Some of the old kung fu movies were starting to make their way around, and that. But the biggest thing was I was in scouts, and so my scout master he had actually studied over in Korea. He was Air Force, and he would do some stuff at scout meetings from time to time. But one meeting he came up and he had a door with him, an interior, just a hollow core door, and he did a kata and some other things, but then he would kick the door and run his fist through the door and punch holes in it and stuff. And I was like, wow, that was to a kid, that's pretty impressive. So, going from clubs to schools, it was hard to find places to study back then because the schools were few and far between, and I was, of course, living in a smaller town at that particular time. But, there was a garage school there, and I didn't know it, but the guy, he called it Chinese karate, but it was actually, an offshoot of Tracy's Kempo. But, back then when you're a kid, you don't know to ask the questions and so forth, and so I bounced around between that and the Korean martial arts for quite a while. We moved. My dad worked for the railroad, so we moved from town to town, and I had to do what I could, but, yeah, we ended up in Ennis, which is south of Dallas. And as I got into high school and I got a vehicle, I was able to drive up into the Metroplex. Of course, it's still being in the '70s, but there was more schools up there to study from then. So um, got into Korean martial arts again. So I'd kind of gone back and forth. And then I started at 20 years old as a police cadet at Irving, and then at 21, I was in the academy, and we had a martial arts club there. in the police department. Irvin's a larger department, so there's a lot of people there. But one of the lieutenants there, pretty impressive fella. He was, still is. He was a fourth degree at that time, and David Seniceros was his instructor. I don't know if you're familiar with that line right there. David was pretty close to Mr. Parker back then, and he had a club, and that was my first introduction to Ed Parker curriculum. So the punching and kicking and the other stuff I learned up into then paid off. But so we started at yellow belt and went all the way up, got up to about blue belt, and then he just closed his club one day. And this was a closed club. It was all police officers, and we worked hard. We took it seriously because it was our primary form of defensive tactics. We all had street experiences that we could share. And Kim, Lieutenant Rowe, he was a pretty well seasoned individual there. He was of course, he's an impressive fellow, tall fellow, about 6'3". We're real tough officer, but he was also a Vietnam vet. He'd been in the 101st Airborne during the late '60s, the worst years over there. So he was an impressive figure. So that's where back then it was the 32 technique curriculum. We're doing 32 techniques per belt, and in that at that particular time, and so forth. So when he shut that, I went back to Tracy's, and I finished out that. You got my Black and Tracy's finally, and then back to Parker's again. That school, that was the old Fort Worth school over there, and I guess it's in North Richland Hills. And so I was at that school, and I was helping him quite a bit over there with teaching and instruction. And then they decided to go IKKA, so we all started swapping again. And so there was a lot of back and forth for me as well with a lot of people during that era, Reggie. It was really hard to get and kind of settle in on one thing because everything was kind of mixed up. We didn't have the amount of people to spread the information as we do now. There's no internet, none of that. You just learned it from your instructor, and sometimes the instructors had a hard time getting material. But for me, it was a necessity. It was my primary form of defensive tactics at that time, and that particular law enforcement agency is a busy one, so there's a lot of stuff that goes on there, and I can continued with that, stayed consistent. When Mr. Parker died in 1990, in January 1991, that's when I started training with Master Tatum personally out in California.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I have kind of a similar start in that the first school that I started training at, we were branded doing Chinese Kempo, which I would later learn that it was essentially the Tracy's curriculum. And we had 40 techniques per belt at that time. So, yeah, I can definitely relate to trying to pack in all of that information.
The Tracy's material had, of course, when I was younger, I was just getting kind of offshoots of it. But I remembered, some of I learned circles of glass. It's kind of like one of the techniques that I got from way back when, so I'll never forget that one. And some of the other ones. But as it got more, I got older, got organized, got the manuals and the books and all that sort of stuff. And Tracy's had the 30 techniques per belt, I think it was back then. You said you were doing 40, so but there was all these different variations.
Yeah.
And so you would have one technique with 5 different versions of it. And I was okay with that back then. I was smart enough to kind of pick and choose what I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm never going to use this, but I need it for testing purposes. And this is something I could relate to. So I tended to gravitate towards the simpler things that I felt were more practical on the street, something I could actually utilize. Like I think, Tracy's had more judo and some throws and stuff like that in there, and I like that for street use. And then it had some stuff that was absolutely ridiculous. It had some jump spinning kicks, and I was pretty good at those things back then. But I'm like, I'm not going to jump spin kick in my uniform with a gun belt and a body armor and all that stuff on, and so I had to kind of
Exactly.
yeah. But for knowledge, I wanted to maintain all of it. So my practice sessions would just be running up and down that curriculum and trying to commit it to memory. And I did that for years. And then, like I said, I had to make a choice.
Mhm. Now, did you have, since you did both versions, did you have and I'm referring to the Ed Parker version and the Tracy version, uh did you have trouble transitioning from? So for me, I still kind of struggle because I've tried to kind of hold on to some of that original training and the original techniques. Sometimes I have that muscle memory or those bad habits or whatnot. I sometimes I run into difficulties when I get to one of those, like I like to call the all-star techniques, those techniques that exist in both versions, your snapping twig and your thundering hammers, things like that. Did you have trouble transitioning between the different versions, or?
No, actually, I didn't, Reggie. I mean, I was when 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 Lieutenant Rowe shut down his school in Irving, or quit teaching. It was at his house, but when he quit teaching, I was already a blue belt, I'm wanting to say, on the 32 technique system. So that's a lot of material. So I found Tracy's quite easy, but I didn't have any trouble adapting it. What I would find myself doing was, inserting Parker's concepts and principles into those Tracy techniques. And, there's a lot of similarities in there, like Tracy's didn't have wide kneel and closed kneel. They just had a soft bow, I think they called it, and a hard bow was a forward bow. Well, to me, it was a forward bow. What
Yeah.
didn't happen was the depth of the explanation that went behind it. Now, that instructor, he would pick my brain back then also at that time, because he was very interested in. And, I was probably the first one that had gone to that school that was a crossover from the Ed Parker system. And when I went in there, I said, "This is what I've been doing, but I'm not doing it anymore," and so forth. So I would say that I was probably pretty instrumental in him wanting to change, because I showed him how it was all laid out and what we were doing, and I think it kind of struck a chord with him there, that he appreciated that, uh, uh, and so forth. So, but for me, within the mass amount of material that was there, I would kind of pick and choose what I thought I could use as an officer, like I said. So I was smart enough to do that. And the stuff that I knew I would never, it didn't bother me. I just practiced it for the purposes of testing. I don't like today, people just will flat out bash it and talk, "Oh, well, that'll never work on the street." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I mean, it's the practitioner, not the technique." But yeah, I agree. I would never try, like, some of these on the street. I would just wouldn't. I wouldn't try them. It's not that way. You got to extract what you need and what fits your ability on it. And so I was already smart enough to do that back then, because the streets had taught me quite a bit. So
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree that while I enjoyed my original training and the school, my eyes and were really kind of opened up when I changed over to the school that I'm with now. Uh, but even in my original training, me and my best friend and slash instructor would we would work techniques and stuff on each other and trying to kind of come up with our own things and do that. Oh well, this might work. This wouldn't work, and we tried to get away from the air karate and tried to work techniques on each other a little bit more than I think a lot of the similar type schools would do. So, but now with the training, having the principles and concepts and the different things, the stances. I mean, that's leg checks and things like that are one of my kryptonite that I like to say, because in that original school, yeah, we didn't do a lot of the leg checks and a lot of the stance work and things like that I have now, and things like freestyle and terminologies and principles and things like that we just didn't do in that original school. And now I feel so much more. There's so much more information and more quality skill sets that are ingrained now, because it's not just doing the kind of the robot, mimic the instructor. It's like, okay, this not only the how but the why
No,
is something that I have more now.
the secrets aren't so much in the techniques as they are in training drills and so forth. And a lot of that, what you mentioned there about footwork and stuff, uh, Reggie, I use that in my tactical teachings quite extensively, because two of the big classes that I teach these days are SWAT and advanced SWAT, which there's a lot of live fire shoot house work in there, maneuvering through doors and hallways and so forth. And I teach a lot of footwork, and a lot of that footwork just comes from our martial arts training, and so forth. I might not use the exact same terminology because there would be no reason to with those guys because they're not actually studying that curriculum. But as far as the actual physical application of the foot maneuvers that I use in close combat, it's no different than some of the foot maneuvers that we do in martial arts, especially in Kempo in my case. And I think the one who brought it all out is it all started clicking for me is when I started training with Larry from the first lesson on. My first lesson with him, we started at orange belt, but we went through the base technique and the entire extension because I really wanted those extensions because it was hard to get that material, even the complete brown belt technique. It was hard to get that material back then during that changeover because Mr. Parker had passed away and everything kind of splintered. And I don't want to. There was just a lot of confusion without leadership at that time. So when I went to Larry, none of that existed. I mean, the man, he knew the system, in my opinion, is good or possibly better than anybody alive at that time. Okay, and so we started at the ground up, and my whole world changed as far as Kempo is concerned with that, and I was like, where was this when I needed it? you know, and that made a huge difference on how I convey it back to my students. Of course, I wasn't teaching at that time. I didn't start actually teaching um, in a school till I was a third degree, um, and I started it in just a garage school at my house. But I was teaching at the police academy. I was teaching defensive tactics and firearms training, and on a regular basis. And I used a lot of we had the concepts, the theories, and the principles in the book, and we mentioned a lot of them back before. But the way Larry explained them, it's like, okay, now that clarifies a lot, and that kind of changed the way that I teach everything. So that was a big evolution for me. Then is when I made that move and started training out on the West Coast in 1990, and now stayed that I continued to do that all the way up through my fifth degree black belt. Uh, it's spent quite a bit of paid time off out there. I'll put it that way. So
Gotcha. Now, did you start training with Mr. Tatum before Ed Parker's passing,
no,
or was that
Mr.
after?
Parker passed in December, and I could see that there was just in the couple weeks after and into January, there was just a lot of confusion. It was unorganized, and you keep it in mind. I've never been a belt oriented person, Reggie, but at one point in time, you want that black belt. And even though I had already taken the Tracy's test and I had that, I was going on 12 years of me looking to get that Parker black belt. And I was still just sitting at first degree brown belt and holding there. And like I said, I'm not belt oriented, but you know, it- a person's only going to go to college so long before they're like, hey, I need to get my degree and move on to the next level, right? So there was like this huge roadblock there, and um, so I made a move shortly afterwards. I could see that there was a lot of good martial artists, but they were all kind of going through the same thing in this part of the country. Everybody was kind of without leadership, I should say, and there was a lot of confusion and even some arguing on how technique should be done. And some of the arguing that I witnessed was over minuscule details. Do I punch like this or like this? Yeah, and I'm like, come on, guys. In a street fight, you're not even going to remember that punch. If you execute it at all. I stayed out of that. So the seminar circuit had died, which I participated in the best that I could back in that day. I was fortunate enough to attend several seminars with Mr. Parker. So all that there was just a huge gap, and I'm sure the people that had public schools were affected by it even more because they were like, "What do we do?" The IKKA was splintered, and right off the bat, there was like a power struggle that I could see was going on. So it's like I don't have time for it. I didn't have time for it. So I called up. I talked to Mrs. Tatum first, and told him the situation, who I was, what I was doing. Explained to him, look, I teach at a police academy on a regular basis. Was actually assigned to the academy. No, I wasn't. I was still an investigator at that time. I was on our felony crimes unit. So I was still an investigator, but later I became a full-time instructor at the police academy. That was my full-time gig, but I was teaching, police officers, and so yeah, they invited me out. I went out, and that's when things really started made the turn for me. It's like all the politicking and the stuff, just it was all behind me at that point.
Gotcha. Of course, my dogs always have
Sure,
to
man.
start barking when recording happens. So,
Hey, it makes
but
it makes it more natural.
yeah. But we'll press on here. So I'm curious when you in the teaching. Was the teaching something that you always wanted to get into, or was it thrust upon you, or how did that all come about?
No, it wasn't thrust upon me. I mean, I was smart enough to recognize, like a lot of us are, that when you teaching helps, the the teacher probably improves more than the student does. Okay, because we're constantly refreshing ourselves on that material, and then when you articulate to other people and then you make their corrections, you're kind of making your own corrections as well. And plus, it reinforces the repetitions because I believe in teaching by demonstration to this day. When we teach a technique on the firing range, we go over the theories and the principles of the technique, and then we use video now. Look at a video of the technique being done, then we do a live fire. The instructor, be it me or you, does a live fire demonstration of the technique. So we're getting the repetitions as instructors constantly as well. So, I saw that as an opportunity, not only just to develop students, but as to grow as a martial artist and as a person. So it wasn't thrust upon me. I recognize the responsibilities of it because to this day, I feel that higher ranks need to spend certain amount of time teaching. Back then, there was a teaching requirement that was, and at my schools, I utilized that. If you wanted your different levels of brown belt, you had to spend so much time teaching private lessons, and then when you got to black, you taught group classes, and you had to spend so much time teaching group classes, or that's how you develop and how you grow. So, one time, I was running that large school at Beltline and Rochelle and Irving, and I averaged over 200 students here year round, and you can't do that without a good high ranking student base to help you keep those going, because everybody needs personal attention in Kempo, okay? And we tried to give them that. We would do 2 lesson or 4 lesson a month, private lesson a month programs on top of group classes. So, I didn't teach all those. The students that were working for the rank taught those. So that's what it does. I think when you teach, you have a some people don't like doing it. And it has a lot of other benefits as well. I mean, people, once they start teaching, sometimes you can almost witness their personality change for the better, because look, you're actually communicating with people now, and these people are starting to look up to you and respect you, and so forth, and that has an effect on the individual, and it attributes to their growth as well. So I think I was smart enough to do that, and a lot of it goes back to having good instructors in the past, and then some of the instructors I had in the academy. Where I was pretty young in the academy, and I had some pretty impressionable men and women that were teaching some of these classes that I had to, and you look back and you're like, I want to be able to do that one day. Okay, it's just part of being mentored, which is kind of a thing of the past these days. Nobody wants to be mentored. They want to be the genius, the master, without doing the mat time and the teaching time. But so that's my answer on that one, Reggie.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely a change. Need to put in the work, and just like you said, a lot of people don't. They just, oh well, what's my new technique? What's my new this? What's my new that? And don't really take the time to be taught.
Well,
They just want to
you'll
kind of
go
take.
look for it on the internet,
Hmm.
and that you know that that kind of became a thing in the later years. Is teaching became somewhat of, okay, I got to clean up this mess that he learned off of a YouTube video, from somebody that nobody. YouTube is full of people teaching stuff they'd never done before.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
oh yeah, Grandmaster YouTube. Yeah,
and
there's been many a
yeah,
many a victim that have fallen prey to Grandmaster
and
YouTube.
it would become a source of frustration with the video learning. So, and I do videos too, but I always say in mine, it doesn't matter, but I say it anyway. Hey, don't use this as a replacement for a live instruction. This is just reference material and entertainment, but people do it.
Oh
I
yeah,
do I
oh
do
yeah.
Zoom lessons just like the next guy, because if I don't, somebody else will. But it's kinda, "Okay, we did a lesson, you look good, but I'm not there." So sometimes I'll have them bring a body with them, so they can at least kinda go through it on somebody, and then I'll bring one of my students on my end, so I've got a body to demonstrate, but it's just not the same. The people are, and I guess it's better than nothing, Reggie. You
Oh
know?
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. It's got to have something, especially so with the capoeira training. There are, since there is not like a school on every corner. It's a little harder to get that training. So, um, when the COVID hit and everything was shut down, uh, doing the remote thing was really a thing that really saved a lot of
See,
schools
especially
and a lot of
with an art
teachers.
with an art like that, I could never, and this is me, there's different forms of learning, and I'm a different learner, but with an art like that, as as sophisticated as some of those moves are, I've got to see it. I've got to be on the other because you can place your hand wrong and you're going to bust your ass. Okay,
Hmm.
I wouldn't even attempt to do something like that. Of course, at my age, I wouldn't attempt it anyway. But if I were younger, I wouldn't even attempt to do it without live instruction. It's like
Yeah, there's definitely a component that you have to have, that you have to be in person. You have to have that real, to feel is to believe. You have to be able to do it physically with an instructor. But there are components that can at least
sure.
get you going, get you maybe not get you started, but help keep your skills
I think
refreshed
if the case
until you can be
like with
in person.
yourself, Reggie, somebody that's got experience in a lot of different martial arts, them looking at something on video and getting something out of it is one thing. But somebody that's, at a lower level just trying to learn from scratch because we got people that coming up now that have been through a whole martial arts system that have never stepped in a dojo and that they're wearing high rank and they're completely correspondence course learned. So it's one thing if you spend a fair amount of time on the mat and then you look at a video and you can relate to that and you can pick something up off of it versus trying from scratch. That's the big, and a lot of people will try it from scratch. So
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't think that's the way to go if you want to be a proficient martial artist. If you want to be a terrible martial artist, then yeah, go ahead and go ahead and get started with Grandmaster YouTube. But yeah, there's yeah, it's interesting. There's technology has both helped and hurt the arts, and it just depends on how you consume it,
it's a great
how you
reference.
make use of it.
It's a reference. It's definitely a step above the big red book that we had back then. And instant access. Personally, I kind of like DVD. And I've produced a lot of martial arts videos. Video production is something I've done on the side. Um, I'm re-editing my first independent film right now, which is a Kempo-based film that's already been released. I'm re-editing it for a second release because we're making a sequel to that, and that's in production right now. So there'll be a sequel to that film coming out. And there's a lesson sprinkled all throughout those films. And then, I helped Master Tatum with his videos, and I've shot a lot of videos, instructional videos for a lot of martial artists, professionally on the side. But it's a great reference. It's a notch above the books, and so forth. But so long as people don't get locked into just doing that and not getting with groups and training and proving themselves out on the dojo floor. So I'm not against videos by any means. I'm just against video only, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah, like we talked a little bit before the mics went hot here. Definitely gonna have to pick your brain offline about some video stuff as I'm making the transition into that for the show. But we'll talk about that talk about that at another time. So one of the things that I've started asking my guest is about what it means to be a black belt, what it takes to earn a black belt, what it means to have that title. As kind of things have changed over the years, as far as I like to say, kind of getting away from the Karate Kid kind of way of life mindset, since there isn't a official kind of standard about what it means to be a black belt. I like to ask my guests what their interpretation of that, and just kind of what your thoughts and feedback about what it takes to be a black belt, what it takes to earn a black belt, what it means to be a black belt, since there isn't a standard or one definition of that.
Yeah, well, we have a curriculum standard in Kempo, and and a lot of martial arts do. The black belt the meaning that went with it, I think, has been really diminished these days because it's been so abused. It used to be, a milestone in life to receive that black belt. And people that had black belts were respected. I mean, back in the early days, um, if you were a third or a fourth degree black belt in Kempo, you were a badass, okay? And not only that, you had done years and contributed, and everybody knew who those people were. Nowadays, they just drop out of the sky, not just in Kempo, but in all martial arts, okay? So the meaning has been diminished. So to me, it's more personal, okay? So not only does it represent the curriculum that um, that I accomplished, that I learned, and that uh, um, I don't want to say mastered, but that I became proficient at those particular levels. But it also represents milestones in life for me. Okay, so each black belt for me, I was at a different phase in my martial arts journey, and also at a different phase in my law enforcement journey, which those two are, I've always said those two are parallel. They're actually intertwined to me. One is the same as the other. I didn't separate the two because they're in my opinion they're so similar. So um, I can look back at each rank and just kind of reflect back on that milestone of where I was at that particular time. I also think the character of a person has a lot to do it, but the contribution that one gives back to the art and to the organization. And then, what are you doing with your life? I mean, are you out just bumming around, not in the mountain to anything? You might be good on the mat, but outside of the mat, you're flopping around like a fish out of water. Okay, where a black belt should have some direction in life. So I think the one makes one better at the other, so to speak. So I think, Reggie, it's a combination of, the curriculum for whatever task that you're in. There is time and grade requirements. I'm good with those, is well, and I always respected those. And but I think there's the outside and the off the mat side of it as well, that a black belt should be uh an example human on the other hand as well. So it's like one of the arguments I used to make, where, coming through the ranks, it was like, if you don't train to do this, taekwondo's the dominant art, or aikido's the dominant art. Now it's jujitsu's the dominant art. And if you don't train this and this, some jujitsu guy is going to kick your ass, and I'm like, okay. So I've been in law enforcement 43 years, and I've never had to deal with a rogue MMA fighter out there kicking people's asses, because there's an ethic behind it, right? And I've never, the toughest people I've had to deal with were, hardened criminals. I've never had a legit. Well, I take it back. There's one case where we had to go in and arrest a martial arts school owner because he was doing some illegal activities involving kids out of his school. But he didn't even try to fight us. Okay, we just went in and took him into custody. So I'm not gonna, you know, gear my black belt training towards fighting other martial arts. I'm not a competitor. If you're going to compete in the ring and you have to, that's a different animal. So there's that personal tailoring aspect. What does the individual need out of the art? If you want to do it just for fitness, fine. If you want to do it because it's a social activity, it's great. If you're self defense, or if you want to compete, okay, but there becomes a point in life where how much are you gonna compete? I mean, you get to a point where you can't get hit in the head anymore. It becomes medically dangerous to receive blows. So, but you still advance in rank, so life becomes the curriculum at that point. So, yeah, I know that was kind of a broad based explanation there, but that's my take on being a black belt.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, one of the things with me asking that is that there isn't any quote unquote right or wrong answers. It's
No, there's not.
it's what
It's wide
what it
open
means to
for
you. And
yeah, wide open for interpretation also. And
oh yeah,
and
for
and there's
sure.
always somebody that's gonna criticize what somebody else says when it comes to that question,
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
you know?
Um, so you kind of touched on it, and this is uh, something that I like to ask for those in your unique position in that. So with Kempo being more self defense oriented than maybe some of your more traditional martial arts, uh, those that train in Kempo, we have this. I don't want to say fantasy, but we kind of have this mindset of, oh well, we're training this so that we can be able to take down that person that's trying to harm us or trying to harm our loved ones. And we have this sense that we can handle ourselves in a realistic situation. And hopefully we never have to be in that situation. But you, like some of my previous guests, are in this unique position where you've actually had to use your skills in the real world, in real world situations. So I'm curious, one, what is maybe some kind of misconceptions about uh, uh, using your Kempo in a real world situation? So I'll use kind of the example of the uh, oh well, 90% of fights go to the ground. And one of my previous guests was like, I've been in thousands and thousands of fights in my life, real world situation. He was a bouncer at a bar, and he described it as being like the bar in the beginning of the movie Roadhouse, where just fights breaking out every night. And so he's fighting multiple people. He's fighting people with weapons, things like that. And he's like, in all the years of all the people I had to fight, he's like, I've never once went to the ground. And uh, we kind of talked about that. That's kind of a more of a law enforcement statistic, and kind of a push by the Gracies, and the rise of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and things like that. So I'm just curious. Yeah, what is maybe some in your experience, maybe some misconceptions about having to use your Kempo in a real world scenario?
Well, just to kinda tap on what you said there about all fights going to the ground, they don't, um, but I have, and one of the worst fights. I don't like using the word fight in a law enforcement context, okay? Because it's a use of force confrontations I had did go to the ground, but I took it there, and it was one on one at that time, and I used grappling and I won until all of his friends came in. This may sound like a cliche, but this is in the mid '80s. It wasn't a cliche to me. I got beat really, really, really bad, and if it hadn't been for another officer, this was as far as them trying to remove my weapon and use it against me, it got that ugly, okay? So, uh, my takeaway from that was I'm never taking a subject to the ground again, no matter how hard it is to get them under control, unless I have sufficient backup there, which I didn't at that time. It was one-on-one, okay? Now, if we kinda bring that around to Kempo, you know, you keep hearing, "Well, Kempo won't work on the streets," because, the way we practice against non-aggressive opponents. You've heard that one before, right? And first of all, with any martial art, um, it comes down to the practitioner, in my opinion. Okay, and to a degree, with Kempo people, they get wrapped up just in name techniques, and if that's all you work, then yeah, you're going to be limited on the street. You got to have an instructor that's capable of organizing drills that keeps your hands and feet moving constantly through a variety of situations. So your training will put you to where no matter how you find yourself positioned to an aggressor, you've been there before in the dojo numerous times and you have a response for that. That's what the training should bring out. And it's not going to be a technique, but you can't tell me that crossing talon's not going to work on the technique, because I've used that move successfully probably more than any. But is that a Kempo move, or is it just a straight arm bar to gain control? But how about the rest of crossing talon where you do all that, Because in law enforcement, I'm probably not going to elbow him to the temple or to the jaw, maybe if deadly force is justified. So there's no winning that argument that Kempo doesn't work on the streets, but I could say the same thing about a boxer. I mean, okay, a boxer sitting there practicing hours on a heavy bag. Okay. Is a heavy bag hitting back? No, the heavy bag's not hitting back. So what's the difference in him doing that on a bag and us doing, he's practicing jab, cross, hook thousands of times. Okay. All right. So what's the difference between him doing that and us practicing a set technique that's in our curriculum? So you got to learn how to extract the elements of the techniques. So if Kempo doesn't work on the streets, is because the individual hasn't been drilled in the proper method to make them spontaneous, no matter where they find themselves positioned to their attacker. So yeah, and I can say with quite a bit of confidence, the very few fights, I'll put it that way, very few fights go to the ground. Now, with your other guests being in a bar situation, who wants to go to the ground in a bar? I mean, even a skilled jujitsu fighter is he knows if I take him to the ground, I'm gonna have all these bar stools and these tables and all this stuff on top of me. There's people everywhere. Anybody can kick me in the head. So anybody can recognize the dangers of going to the ground in a bar scene. So I can definitely see in that environment that his job is to gain control of them and get them outside. Okay, so now in a one-on-one situation in an open area like a grassy area, that's jujitsu slash MMA territory right there. I wouldn't want to fight one of those guys on those kind of on those kind of grounds out there, because if a good grappler wants to get you down, he's going to get you down. But it goes back to the ethics side of it also. Okay. Um, Most good grapplers aren't training to go out there and fight, innocent civilians out on the street. Right. So I haven't run across a lot of that. Instinctively, people like to punch, clutch, grab, and they'll try some kind of an instinctive tackle, because that's just kind of our primal instinct right there. Okay, and it may turn into a roll around match on the ground. So yes, you have to know some ground fighting, be it wrestling, judo, jujitsu. We had a jujitsu class at my studio on Wednesdays in the afternoons. It was just open to my brown and black belts way before the ground fighting craze started on. One of my friends that's a retired U.S. Marshal, he would very, very competent in Aki Jiu-Jitsu, and the locking and throwing arts, but he would teach a ground fighting class there. So we were doing it out of necessity, because Kempo is, it's void in that area. There's a few things, but there's no set techniques, which those force you to remember things. But if it won't work on the street, then you need to find another instructor, because the art is as good as any art out there, as far as how the drills bring out the attributes you need to the street. That's up to the instructor and the student.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, I always kind of laugh at the, oh, well, this art wouldn't work, or that technique wouldn't work, or this wouldn't work. And I laugh at that, because it's like, well, make it work. If,
I don't even engage in those conversations, because it's irrelevant. You're never going to win. Some of the toughest individuals that I've ever had to deal with had no martial arts training at all. None
Hmm.
whatsoever. They were just and me with years and years and high degrees of black belts, I've run across untrained and I don't wanna fight those people, okay? There's a psychological component to that also, um, and that's a big factor of it, it's like some people say that if you haven't, competed in tournaments that you're lacking in your ability on the street. I'm like, "N no, no, you're not." Some people say that, being involved in combat and shootings that has no bearing on being a martial artist. And I'm like, it most certainly does. Okay, because there's that element of that person having experienced. If I don't win this confrontation, I'm not going home. I'm going to die. You can't replicate that on the mat. Yeah, I mean, you can, you can sure you can go all out and you can fight hard, but when you go into a competition, yeah, people don't fear losing their life in that kind of thing. They just don't. But when you're dealing with an armed suspect or 2 or 3 suspects, or you find yourself in a real combat in that legitimate, element of life and death comes in, yeah, it does a lot for you as a martial artist. That's something you need to experience because the, uh, the aspects of stress response that you have to deal with on top of the situation can really be overwhelming, really be overwhelming. So, yeah, it does make a difference.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've said for years that I would never fight my brother, even though I've trained in 7 martial arts for years, and he's 10 years my senior. He's been in way more altercations than I have, and yeah, I would. I don't think all my kempo and capoeira and jiu-jitsu would would do me a bit of good fighting him. He would completely mop the floor with me. So
Well, one
yeah,
thing I
it's
found
all
out, Reggie, as far as streets are concerned, is people, I've had confrontations where, yes, I've had to strike numerous times, and some of them, 1 or 2 strikes and it's over. But there's been a lot of people that I've been up against that, they didn't feel the pain. I couldn't hit them. You couldn't hit them hard enough because they're just that tough, and who knows what they've got going through their system. So, having all that, experience has a lot to do with how I teach it as well. So, it's not like the movies, I'll say.
exactly. All right. So, like I say with just about every guest here, there's so many things that I wish we could get into, but we can't have a 12-hour show. So
Sure.
uh, we'll definitely have to do a part 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and all that. And since we're in the same area, hopefully next time we can do it in person. But we're going to go ahead and move into our lightning round here. So I got a few questions for you as we head towards wrapping up.
Got you.
So the first one being, do you have a favorite technique?
Um, no, not a favorite technique per se because I don't dwell on the techniques. I extract substance from the techniques. So I would say I probably extract more from the browns, but then again, I don't. I'm smart enough to know that you're never going to do a technique in its entirety unless you're just really lucky. Okay, so that's my take on that. Is I don't categorize them into favorites. Now I have certain belts that I like running through more than others. Okay, but it's probably just because, of personal preference more than anything.
Which belt would
I
that
like running through the
that be?
blues,
Oh, nice.
I like and the extensions all the way through just for, if I wanna get a good cardio workout, just stick with that. But then again, I'm not gonna lock in on a technique because to me it's not about the techniques, it's about the information contained within, uh, so and that would probably be my second favorite is the blues. There's a lot of good what I would call entries in there, as well as with the blue freestyles. So, there's a lot of good defenses in there as well. So you gotta, all of them is the answer.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. I
Like, how
like
about almost all of them?
it. Gotcha. Gotcha. I like it. All right. So then the next question, do you have a favorite form and or set?
I'm kind of the same way with the with the forms. Okay, I don't so much nowadays. Um, used to I had thirst for that information, and I got all the way through Form 8 with the knives and everything. So I don't so much nowadays run through a form in its entirety as I will. I'll pick out a section of the form and then maybe go to a section of another form and a section of another form. As far as sets are concerned, I do a lot of weightlifting, and before I warm up, I use elbow set, which is striking set 2, and blocking set 2 to warm up my shoulders and upper body. It's great. People sit there and they roll forward and roll backwards, and I'll just run through and do my set and everything. And that, especially with the elbows, because you got all those elbows rolling and stuff, and that really loosens my shoulders up. So I use it for that reasons before chest day. I'll run through blocking set 2 and elbow set 2. Keeps the sets sharp, but I'm ready to lift when I'm done because my shoulders are all warmed up and my upper body's all warmed up and ready to go. So that's how I utilize those.
Oh, very nice. I like that. I like that. I'm going to have to implement that in my training regiment. So very
Hey,
nice. I
it
like it.
makes more it you get more mileage than just sitting there and doing, neck rolls and shoulder because you're doing a lot of the same movements but with purpose.
I like it. I like it. All right. Next question. Do you have a favorite weapon?
The favorite weapon is the one I have in my hands when I need it the most. I get that asked about that about firearms. Okay, because I teach so many tactical courses. Said, Tim, what's your favorite handgun or what's your favorite firearm? I said, the one that I have the quickest and most rapid access to when I need it the most. Now, to trim the fat off of that a little bit, in martial arts training, the most commonly utilized weapons on the street is some type of an impact weapon and some type of a bladed weapon. Outside of firearms, I'm talking about now. So I have never been attacked or seen anyone attack anyone else with a staff. Okay. So could I get through staff set right now? Yeah, probably to save my ass. But do I practice staff set on a regular basis? I do not and have not for years. Do I practice stick and knife on a regular basis? The answer is yes, and I consider them both equal. Okay. Now, an impact a weapon could be anything. All right. So I've even had an encounter once where um, a couple was fighting over property as they were separating, and the male subject took a video cassette recorder, a VCR, and smashed the female over the head with it right in front of me. And the fight was on. This guy went ape shit swinging this VCR at me and her and everything. And so I had to take him down. He was fighting with a VCR. Craziest thing I never thought I'd encounter. So an impact weapon can be anything. Keep that in mind. But so from martial arts, yeah, stick and knife equally.
Very nice. Very nice. I like it. All right. Next question. If there's anyone that you could train with, living or dead, fictional or non fictional, besides Ed Parker, who would that be?
Ed Parker. No, I'm happy with Larry. Of course, I would certainly like to be in a class that was taught by Bruce Lee. That would be something historic, of course. Alls I know of him is what I read in magazines and saw on television. I was fortunate enough to attend several seminars with Mr. Parker and had a little bit of one-on-one time with him. Um, but I'm not gonna say he was my instructor because he wasn't. Okay, and other people might make that claim. I'm not gonna be that guy, but, um, I could probably think on that a little bit more, and there's some, others I'd probably wanna come up with, but, that's where I'm at on that one for right now.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Final question, and this is going to be kind of a two-parter. Uh, First part is what is something that motivates you, that always motivates you to train? And then the second part of of that is what is something that you would like to put out to the listeners as something that you would recommend that they use to motivate them to train?
So, what motivates me to train now, probably more than anything, is age. Being in my mid 60s, I want to prolong an active life as much as I can. I am still active on the force. I'm a sergeant, so I'm still out there on the streets. But so that'll always be there. Okay. But now it's combining the martial arts with fitness training and cardio training and that, and then also because I use it in the movies. All right, the films that we're working on, I want to be able to produce a good product. So when I need motivation to train, what I do is I give myself a project to work on. Okay, it's like, okay, I want to develop and work on this area. So how about if I put together a seminar and I go teach a seminar on these topics, because that'll force me to, master that material that I'm going to teach. Or, in the case of the projects I'm doing now, okay, I'm going to utilize this, and this in a fight scene because it's going to benefit my training as well. So those are some things that motivate me, and so forth. The street aspect is always there. It's always there every time with firearms training as well. But every time I leave this house to go to work, the last thing I do before I walk out the door is I stop, and it may be 5 a.m. I'm checking in for an early morning shift. I stop, I face my fireplace, and I practice a few punch outs with my pistol just to get my mind in the right place. Not that I'm looking to go out there and get involved in a confrontation, but if it comes, I want to be ready for it. So that aspect will always be there. But for right now, I'm at the part, if you remember the L's for black belt tests, you got longevity, you got loyalty, longevity, luck. Okay. I'm in the longevity phase right now. So that's my main motivation. So what was the next part, Reggie?
And then, what is something that you would want to put out there to motivate others to train?
For all of life, combining something you love with something you're good at is a recipe for success. And that's how people should look at the martial arts. Forget what all the naysayers say. If you love Tai Chi and you're good at it, okay, that's all that's necessary. Y- If you love Aikido and you're good at it, that's a recipe for success right there. The hell with all the people that says, well, you can't use Aikido on the street. If that's not part of that person's love of that art, then it's not relevant. Okay, they're fine doing what they do because they get with the personal growth and satisfaction that they need out of it. Okay, it's like if I were to go to try to start over again right now with another art because people say, it's not that I couldn't, but if I don't have that love of it in there, then I'm never going to be good at it. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, totally, totally. I like it. All right. Okay, so we are at our final piece of business today, and that is the shameless self promotion. So you can plug anything that you want, or if there's anything that we hadn't covered that you wanted to make sure to get out, you now have the floor, and then we will close out from there.
Okay, so bulotmedia.com. We are producing, we're fixing to re-release a martial arts film, independent movies that I produced and shot. It's high quality stuff for the budget, and then we're working on a second one right now. Okay, we're going to come to a point in time where if people want to get involved in the project, name in the credits, be on the film, dummy up, be a bad guy, be a good extra, whatever. We've got some scenes coming up where we're going to be needing people. So, and also as a result, I mean, who doesn't like low budget martial arts films? If you don't like low budget martial arts films, there's something fundamentally wrong with you, you know? So, but the fight scenes are pretty good. We got some pretty good characters in there. Larry is in the first one. We're re-editing all that and we're going to re-release it. phenomenal fight scenes all throughout the film, and we're doing the same in the second one. I mean, it's got a little bit more budget, a little bit better technology. There's going to be some tactical scenes in there, explosions, shootings, tactical stuff, as well as martial arts stuff in there. So, if anybody's interested in that, they can reach out to me and I'll get back with them. And if they got something to bring to the table on that, let's talk, because those are all coming up. Other than that, Reggie, I appreciate you having me on. I wish you a lot of success in what you're doing here, because it's a positive force in the martial arts, and we need that these days. Okay, keeping it clean and keeping it humble.
Yes, yes. Thank you. I thank you so much for taking the time to being on and sharing your story and your insights. And we'll definitely have to talk again more about video stuff and police situations. I've been quite addicted to watching body cam videos as of late. So we'll definitely have to talk about some of those things at another point. But yeah, I just once again thank you so much for being on, and I can't wait to share this out with the listeners. And once again, I thank you again.
All right, Reggie, take care. Appreciate it, and good luck with your future podcasts there.
Thank you for listening to My Empty Hands. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. If you didn't enjoy it, please share it with an enemy. If you'd like to be a guest, or if you would like to recommend a guest for the show, please email me at podcast@talkingkempo.com. Thank you.